Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to wisdom, warrior, Manjushri. Homage to all lineage, benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in millions of eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, please generate supreme bodhicitta. Now I'll teach the words of my perfect teacher. In the words of my perfect teacher, we are now teaching relying on spiritual teachers. In relying on spiritual teachers, we teach examining teachers. Previously, we have already introduced the characteristics of spiritual teachers, analyzing the characteristics they should possess from both Sutra and Tantra perspectives. Today, we'll continue to elaborate. We'll discuss the opposite characteristics of teachers who should be abandoned. Some teachers lack proper characteristics, and this must be discovered before relying on them. After discovering this, although people call them teachers, you shouldn't rely on them. Not relying on them is called abandoning them. There's no need to rely on them. What kind of teachers cannot be relied upon? In this text, I remember, it should be explained in 4 aspects. These types of teachers, most importantly, cannot be relied upon. There are also others, like the wish-fulfilling treasury and the treasury of precious qualities and finding rest in the nature of the mind, and other treatises that also explain extensively. I hope our Dharma friends present should frequently consult these sutras and treatises to understand in detail what kind of conditions the teachers we rely on need to have, which teachers cannot be relied upon. You should understand clearly. If you don't understand, you might have already spent time. Some people have relied on a teacher for many years. Finally, after several decades or years, they discover, oh, this person is not a genuine teacher. They are specifically, as worldly people would say, a fraud. In this case, all of one's energy has been exhausted and one must start over to find another teacher. By then, life may have reached its edge, making it very difficult. So such problems for us as practitioners and students of Buddhism examining teachers and relying on teachers is particularly crucial. Now, I often find that some individuals in Han regions, not all of them, some people are still very wise, but some don't examine or understand at all, relying carelessly. But after relying, they regret, slander, and then abandon. This is also unnecessary. Sometimes I think that those who truly don't qualify as teachers, if they are frauds, there may not necessarily be real fault, because they themselves may not have empowerments, may not have lineage, may not have genuine teachings. They are completely manifesting a teacher's appearance for a certain goal. Actually, such people may not truly have the fault of abandoning a teacher, but it's hard to say because the teachings they speak are the Tathagata's words. Perhaps in the past, they truly heard these teachings, received this transmission, and then recited it to others. If their goal is not for benefiting others, there may be some fault, so the safest and best method is to first examine skillfully before relying. This point is very important. Some say there's no time to examine, but it's not that there's no time. If it were acute appendicitis, then you really wouldn't have time. If you delay further, it would be too late. Actually, regarding our practice, you are all ready. Some Buddhist practitioners have never studied for 20 or 30 years. Some for 70 or 80 years have never studied. Now there's nothing too urgent. You should inquire about what kind of person this is and understand them to examine them. Frequently stay around them. Whether this person is a bad person or a good person, then help them with some tasks and understand them first. Actually, if you want to examine them, this is also possible and permissible. So many of our urban Buddhists, especially those who haven't studied and contemplated before, often make this mistake. After relying, they discover many problems. Then they start to regret and slander. This is unnecessary. So in these aspects, everyone should contemplate in detail, contrary to the above. Teachers who should be abandoned. What kind of teachers cannot be relied upon? Originally having no merit from study, contemplation, and meditation in their continuum, yet thinking themselves, I am the son of such and such teacher, or I am a noble descendant, etc. Considering themselves superior to others in caste, they think, I am some teacher's son, teacher's grandson, teacher's relative, teacher's friends, so and so. Now many people, including some from places where teachers reside, They used to tell many Han people, I am from near the Buddhist academy, or I am from Sertar, or I am from such and such place, Qinghai so-and-so place, a person from where a great accomplished master resides. People from that place are not necessarily very good, but some people always say, oh, you're really from that place? Oh, then we must rely on you. They call everywhere saying, a teacher has come from such and such place. Must be very remarkable, because I've heard of this teacher, so we must go listen to teachings, receive empowerments, etc. Some people are particularly ignorant in these aspects, without any reason. Some say they are some teacher's son, teacher's nephew, teacher's grandson, teacher's such and such relatives and friends. This doesn't necessarily mean they are very good. Although the teacher is very remarkable, their relatives are not necessarily very good. Indeed, this has been mentioned before. Buddha Shakyamuni was very remarkable, the teacher of the three realms, but Devadatta was actually also his relative. But what kind of person he was, everyone should be clear, so sometimes we cannot definitively say they are bad, nor definitively say they are good. So now, many people have such claims, this must definitely be examined, and now my lineage is such and such. This is simply like the Brahmins' hereditary caste concepts. Or, although possessing minor merits from study, contemplation and meditation, they don't practice with a pure mind seeking future lives. But what is it? Fearing to lose their certain position, the teacher's position or their own position, if they are a relative or an abbot of a monastery. In this case, fearing to lose such position and status with such goals, all their actions are only seeking for this life's objectives. We call such teachers wooden mill teachers. What kind of wooden mill teachers? Everyone should know when grains are made into powder. Actually, in ancient times they used stone mills. Now it seems many places have mills made of steel. There are also wooden ones if made of wood. On the surface, from the external appearance, there's no difference from a mill, and the sound it makes when turning is exactly the same as other mills. The sound it produces is even louder than others. But actually, because it's particularly light and flimsy, it can only grind and wear down the mill itself. Besides this, it absolutely cannot grind grains into fine powder. It absolutely cannot. The same principle applies. Such teachers may appear particularly dignified on the outside, or their reputation may be even louder and more famous than proper spiritual teachers, and their actions may be particularly skillful at deceiving others, but actually this teacher is also deceiving themselves. If we rely on them, we not only gain no merit from study, contemplation, meditation, or transcendent qualities. Even sentient beings who form connections with them gradually fall into lower realms. This is very dangerous, so like the Brahmins' hereditary practices. In our Buddhism, the Buddha also said in the scriptures, caste is not important, reputation is not important. What's important is study. Study includes both discipline and realization. This is very important. If a person has completely mastered all the essential points of Sutra and Tantra, then even if they're a beggar, we can venerate them. So, in others' eyes, such people seem to be considered noble in race or relatives of some teacher. This point must definitely be examined, whether in ancient times or now. There will always be such people frequently deceiving others. I remember there's also a story in the Mahasangha Vinaya. In the past, there was a Brahmin national teacher who had a son. This Brahmin had 500 students under him. This Brahmin actually had quite good practice. It seems the son of the Brahmin's servant was also exceptionally wise and remarkable. He was clever and intelligent, doing everything properly and in accordance with principles. Later, this servant's son, in his group among the group under the Brahmin, often engaged in debates and discussions. In this process, some conflicts arose later. Then he left this group and went to a neighboring country. The original Brahmin seemed to be called Purna. At that time, in his own country, he was spreading his teachings and gathering disciples. Meanwhile, that servant's son went to the neighboring country for survival. He pretended to be the son of that famous Brahmin. He said, "I am the son of Brahmin Purna." The local people also believed this. That country had a person who also had over 500 disciples under him. Then in the process of conversing with him, he felt that his wisdom and various aspects were quite good. Later, this Brahmin allowed his own disciples to rely on him. and also perhaps gave his daughter to him in marriage. He also often claimed in front of others to be the son of the original Brahmin. Actually, he wasn't that Brahmin's son. He was the son of the Brahmin's servant, but he went outside to pretend. Later, the original Brahmin Purna went to that country to search for the servant's son. As a result, he saw him touring majestically with many retinues below him. At this time, he discovered that person, who seemed to be called Yaradatta. When he saw the Brahmin, he became particularly afraid of exposing his true identity. When his retinue was not around, he came over to apologize to him, saying, "I've been claiming to be your son here. Please don't reveal this. Otherwise, it might be very inconvenient for me in many ways." But actually, that Yaradatta often bullied his wife. Every time his wife prepared delicious food for him, he would be picky, saying he was dissatisfied. That very day, Yaradatta's wife, thinking this was her husband's father, brought him home. When her husband wasn't there, she asked the Brahmin, "I very much want to satisfy my husband, but every time he eats, sometimes I can't make food that satisfies him." "What did he like to eat when he was in his home country?" she asked. At that time, the Brahmin left her with a verse. He said, when he particularly dislikes the food, you can use this verse in his ear. What did he say? Having no relatives, traveling to foreign lands, deceiving people everywhere. Coarse food is your usual food. Why complain about fine food? Coarse food is originally your usual food because he was originally a servant's son. Now, with fine food, such good delicacies, how can you be so picky? This is roughly the meaning later. Every time this wife's husband showed dislike, dissatisfaction, or pickiness about food, she would conveniently use this verse. After hearing this verse, he would stop talking. So in this story, there was a servant who, using the name of a Brahmin national teacher, went to foreign lands and began deceiving many people. Now, similar cases of so-called pseudo-teachers who harm themselves and others are indeed very numerous. Some people don't even possess basic worldly character and virtues, yet such people consider themselves to be very remarkable. They have no merit from study, contemplation, and meditation. Some people, although they have a little, may not even have the thought of liberation from life and death. They themselves have never thought, "I want liberation, I want to renounce this world," but in front of others they appear so dignified. What is their goal? To obtain in this very life either position or wealth, etc. So when we study Buddhism, we should first polish our wisdom eye to observe the teacher we rely on, whether they truly possess the characteristics of a genuine spiritual teacher. This is very important. This is the first type to be abandoned, the wooden mill-like teacher. Second, there are also some teachers who lack the ability to tame disciples' mental continuums. Their own continuums are no different from ordinary people. They don't possess even the slightest special qualities, not to mention transcendent qualities like those of great masters of the past, the genuine bodhicitta of benefiting all sentient beings, the wisdom, realizing emptiness, and the skillful means of guiding countless sentient beings, etc. These are even more out of the question. They don't even have basic worldly character. Ordinary people in the world don't lie, don't deceive others, don't steal. Those who never study Buddhism or other religions, some ordinary worldly people speak truthfully and honestly. Their behavior, inside and out, is consistent and authentic. They would never do bad things, but some people don't even have such virtues, let alone being superior. They don't even have the behavior of average worldly people. They're particularly inferior, but other foolish people blindly believe without examination and elevate them to very high positions. Tulku, teacher, Kenpo, even Dharma king, teacher of the three realms, etc. Considering them the unique world leader, they always think this way. At this time, their own continuum is also changed beyond recognition by fame and profit. Proud, arrogant, looking down on everything, they turn a blind eye to the qualities of noble beings, whether past great masters or present great masters, their various worldly and transcendent qualities. Such teachers can be called well-frog teachers, no different from frogs in a well, because the teacher has no vast learning in worldly or transcendent matters, understanding nothing, only having a few foolish disciples around them, who constantly flatter them, saying they are very remarkable. When His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok went abroad, we encountered an elderly teacher sent by a certain center in India. This teacher appeared particularly arrogant in front of others. At that time, a Kenpo with us said, "This person is a well-frog-like teacher. There's no helping it." Our Kenpo said, "This person is exactly the well-frog-like teacher described in the words of my perfect teacher. He himself has no vast learning. He understands nothing. There's no helping it. He can only deceive those foolish disciples below him. There's no helping it." He said indeed. Sometimes many of us present may have also seen when people gain some fame and have around them those who don't understand Buddhism well enough. As Venerable Longchenpa says in Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, no matter how many insect-like disciples there are, they are meaningless. The disciples are also blind like insects, understanding no principles, only seeing the teacher as a Buddha, but the teacher's behavior is also not in accordance with Dharma. Their study, contemplation, and meditation are no different from ordinary people, even ordinary among ordinary people. Among ordinary people, they are no different from particularly inferior people. Such people often have wealth, fame, and power. So actually, such teachers are called well frogs, seeing the sky from a well. We usually also speak of such teachers this way. Here, a story is told about what well frog-like teachers are like. It's said that once there was an aged frog that had lived for a long time in a small well. One day, a frog from the ocean came to it. At that time, the well frog asked, "Where did you come from?" The sea frog said, "I came from the ocean, from the East Sea." Then the well frog asked, "How big is the ocean roughly?" The sea frog said, "Very, very big." Then it asked, "Is it as big as a quarter of my well?" It said, more than that, much more." Then it asked again, "Is it as big as half of my well?" It said, "Also more than that, it's very big." Then it kept asking, "Is it as big as my well?" The sea frog still repeated the same words, more than that, more than that." If the ocean were exactly the same as your small well, there would be many logical fallacies. Just joking. The well frog didn't believe it, saying, "It's impossible for there to be such a big ocean. Then let's go see together." So the sea frog and well frog went together. Finally, when they saw the ocean, the well frog immediately fainted and died with its head bursting. What we usually say, scared to death. So it really died there. I remember in the Tang dynasty there was someone called Han Yu who also said in his The Original Way, sitting in a well and observing the sky, saying the sky is small. It's not that the sky is small. That is to say, sitting in a well and observing the sky, thinking the sky is very small. In reality, it's not that the sky is small. It's just that the person sitting in the well sees only a limited scope because his vision is narrow. The conclusions he makes or determines are similarly limited. So in this world, whether it's teachers or ordinary people, sometimes as the way of living also teaches when one's wisdom has not matured or when one hasn't studied extensively or seen the outside world in such circumstances, one often considers oneself quite extraordinary. But in reality, this is not the case. I remember in the Chinese classic Zhuangzi, it also says a story quite similar to the one about observing the sky from a well. It's also about a small frog in a well who met a sea turtle that came from the Eastern Sea. When the frog asked about the size of the Eastern Sea at first, it didn't believe what it heard at all. Then the sea turtle continuously explained to it, "My Eastern Sea, 4,000 years ago, during the time of Yao, Shun, and Yu, experienced floods for 9 years, yet did not become deeper. 3,000 years ago, during King Tang's time, there was drought for 7 years, yet my seawater was not diminished." When it said these words, later that well frog also seemed to become extremely frightened, though it wasn't scared to death. I remember something like this. So in this world, there are often such analogies. Actually, as Buddhists, when relying on spiritual teachers, we must certainly examine from this perspective. Otherwise, we ourselves, some disciples who are originally narrow-minded and poorly educated, but under certain circumstances consider themselves quite remarkable. If this is the case, when you later appear as a teacher before others, you may also present an inappropriate image. Some teachers also haven't seen the world and haven't mastered the profound meanings of the vast ocean of scriptures and treatises. This will also lead to particularly inappropriate behaviors, so such well frog-like teachers should also be abandoned. This is the second type of teacher worth abandoning. There are also teachers who have never relied on wise teachers themselves, nor have they diligently studied sutra classics and tantra continuums. Narrow-minded and ignorant, they have nothing, even they themselves have never attended a proper Buddhist academy, completely ignorant of sutra, tantra, and doctrinal teachings, knowing nothing at all. The afflictions in their minds are even coarser than ordinary people's. When they lose their temper, many people become terrified. Ah, my teacher is angry. What should we do? Help! Is there such a thing? Lacking mindfulness and vigilance, causing them to violate precepts and break vows. Both sutra precepts are destroyed and tantric vows are destroyed. Their mind stream is even lower than ordinary people's, yet they behave like great accomplished masters, speaking grandly with lofty rhetoric as high as the sky. Their greed, anger, and jealousy are extremely intense. Having severed the rope of loving kindness and compassion, this is what's called a teacher, like a mad guide. Such people are particularly frightening because they have no genuine precepts, no genuine wisdom. They possess no qualities whatsoever, whether from their behavior or their spiritual level. It's particularly poor. Yet their conduct is far more extreme than some great accomplished masters. Eating meat, drinking alcohol, sexual misconduct, including killing in the world. Such people dare to do anything because they have no concept of cause and effect. Without a concept of cause and effect, they can commit any wrongdoing. As the Compendium of the Essentials of Dharma teaches, foolish people without precepts develop heightened distraction, continuously creating various wrongdoings. Hell is not far away. Foolish people without precepts often generate various heightened distractions and continuously create all kinds of negative actions without any fear or terror in their hearts. Such people, it can be said, in this world will create any kind of karma, completely like mad teachers. Such teachers are also quite numerous nowadays. Often we see them in Chinese areas, and they even frequently tell others that eating meat, drinking alcohol, killing, and various wrongdoings are not defiling, because they themselves have never truly studied so-called precepts and pure perception. They don't care about these at all. Including among some tantric teachers, some are truly excessive. The rather excessive behavior of certain individuals, after observation, might lead to such judgment. Such conclusions might be reached. So this is what's discussed here as mad teachers. Now among sutra practitioners there are also some. I heard of a monastery with very good finances but no study, contemplation or meditation at all. Their teacher, in order to have many disciples in every room of every monk in the monastery, allows internet access, television, everything is permitted. What's the only requirement? Just morning and evening services. Everything else is optional. So outwardly the monks appear very orderly during morning and evening services. Reliable people told me that during morning and evening services it's very inspiring. Each one's behavior is particularly proper. But after class, how do they spend their days? Not a day of study, contemplation or meditation. All day long, either playing cards or doing many improper things. It's quite pitiful to see them wearing such robes and going to restaurants to eat meat freely among Chinese Buddhism. There are also some mad teachers and mad behaviors. Tibetan Buddhism also cannot exclude this. Indeed, from an individual perspective, some exist. This is not a flaw of Buddhism. Buddhism is very well regulated in its texts. But sometimes when people don't practice it ourselves, perhaps some community teachers, including these disciples, all do improper things. As a result, many lay practitioners and monastics cannot generate faith and have no way to increase their understanding. Today, someone asked me about some documents that stipulate that Tibetan Buddhism cannot enter Chinese areas. How do you handle this? I told them that actually Tibetan and Chinese traditions are simply different lineages from when they were transmitted. Buddhism doesn't distinguish between Tibetan or Chinese. It's all teachings of bodhicitta and emptiness. Buddhism fundamentally doesn't distinguish ethnicity, borders, or regions. It doesn't distinguish any of these at all. It's a crystallization of human compassion and wisdom. Every person, every place can accept it. It's just that sometimes when we connect it with history, politics, and economics, and combine it with various other social, cultural domains, when we combine all these together, it seems Buddhism becomes Tibetan, Chinese, Southern traditions. Even Even within Tibetan tradition, there are various divisions when our human thinking doesn't follow Buddhism. Oh, I can only accept this Buddhism, not that Buddhism. Such discriminating choices will certainly constitute the fault of slandering the Dharma. So from a broad perspective, speaking from broad principles, all lineages share the same teachings. It's just that we practitioners sometimes violate principles to varying degrees. Such phenomena are very common. Now there's another type of teacher who leads disciples astray, not possessing even the slightest quality superior to oneself. Teachers lacking compassion and bodhicitta are called teachers like blind guides. They don't understand how to open the eyes of discernment. They fundamentally don't know how to teach disciples. Sometimes I see some monasteries crowded with people. I really wish how wonderful it would be if there were a spiritual teacher here. If there were a spiritual teacher, they could arrange 1 or 2 classes daily to teach these faithful people some basic Dharma principles. But the teachers, as long as they have their daily meals, don't care about anything else. They have no concern, just letting them bow to the Buddha and burn incense. That's all. Those faithful people are also there in confusion for peace in this life, to bless my son. Some people make simple wishes for this present life. Now, sometimes when I see particularly magnificent places of practice, I sometimes think, if there were a spiritual teacher here to gather all these surrounding people, spending half an hour teaching them what Buddhist compassion is like, what Buddhist wisdom is like. Actually, with such teaching, many people below would completely understand the so-called Buddhist teachings, but there's no transmission of thought, only material exchange. Of course, before Buddha statues, if you worship and prostrate, there is also merit, but some people often have empty thoughts that cannot be satisfied. So when relying on some teachers, often these teachers are also improper. I saw in the book Exploring the Traces of the Mind, the author described many so-called tulkus, and teachers arriving at certain places claiming to be some tulku, saying you have karmic connections with me from past lives. You are some Dakini, I am some remarkable teacher. If we form a marriage bond, we'll later give birth to a tulku son. This will benefit Dharma propagation in the future, and so forth. These people also believe this is truly the teacher's Vajra words that would never deceive anyone, and many people even go to rely on them. When they come down, they don't discuss what the teacher's realization is, what his attainments are, how his learning is. They often only discuss how this teacher dresses and adorns himself, how his speech and behavior are, only discussing these things. When he wrote this book, at that time in his mind, many people's situations at that time emerged, and he wrote them out. So sometimes we also often see this kind of foolish mutual reliance method. This way, it completely misleads people, all self-deception and deceiving others, very dangerous. But there's no way. Society has become like this now. Many so-called fake teachers, these people, and they speak particularly nicely on the surface, they also truly appear to be some great accomplished masters. In that book it says, those so-called teachers with special psychic powers and remarkable abilities in Chinese areas, when their stories are told before people from their own hometowns, they all laugh. Not one person pays attention to him, but these people, when they arrive in big cities, become very remarkable so-called Vajra teachers. So I think some of what this author says, I feel, is still quite practical. We're not saying who writes well or who writes poorly, but seeking truth, seeking reality. This point is very important. Now let me summarize what was discussed above. Roughly 4 types of teachers. These 4 types of teachers, at that time Rigdzin Jigme Lingpa explained in verse form in the Treasury of Precious Qualities. What does the Treasury of Precious Qualities say? Like Brahmins guarding their caste, worried about losing and destroying their position study and contemplation not for future life results, like a wooden mill guide. This first one has already been explained. Then the second type of teacher, though not different from ordinary nature, fools place faith and put them in high positions, gaining offerings and wealth. Their minds become arrogant, like well-frog teachers. This is the second type of teacher just mentioned, narrow-minded, ignorant, breaking precepts and vows, inferior minds but behavior high as heaven, severing the rope of compassion. Relying on mad teachers increases evil. If you rely on these three types of teachers above, then evil increases, especially relying on those without qualities superior to oneself, without compassion but with reputation. Their reputation is still quite good, some so-and-so reincarnation or graduated from some Buddhist academy. Now there are also some like this in Chinese areas. Relying on such blind leaders is a great mistake, accompanied by deception, drifting in dark places. If we rely on such deceitful people, pretentious people, then we will forever drift in dark lower realms. Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava also said, "Not examining the teacher is like drinking poison. Not examining disciples is like jumping off a cliff. Without examining the teacher, it's like drinking poison, very dangerous. Without examining disciples is also like jumping off a cliff." Previously, when Kublai Khan relied on Chogyal Pakpa, he said, "Now I should rely on you, because I have already observed you carefully for 6 years. I feel you are a teacher with excellent qualifications. I must definitely rely on you." Later, Chogyal Pakpa said, "Since you observed me for 6 years, from today onward, I also want to observe you for 6 years before we proceed." The 50 verses of Guru devotion also teaches, therefore, heroes should first examine the relationship between teacher and disciple. When teaching this, Master Tsongkhapa quotes scriptural authority from the Vajragalan Tantra when relying on spiritual teachers, mutually observe for 12 years. Many of us now, not to mention 12 years, don't even have 12 days of observation time. If a phone call comes today, everyone rushes. If receiving a phone call while driving home, so-and-so teacher has come. Do you want to come for empowerment? Oh, yes, yes, yes. Immediately turn around and make a sharp U-turn to go back and rely on them. No time for observation. Perhaps they've practiced impermanence too well, feeling everything is impermanent. If waiting a few more days, this opportunity might not exist, so they go to rely on them. Teachers are our refuge for life after life, also the guides who teach the principles of accepting and rejecting cause and effect. If, without careful examination, we unfortunately encounter those evil spiritual friends, if encountering some evil spiritual friends, bad spiritual friends, all the good resources of a faithful person's lifetime will be completely buried in their hands. Very dangerous. All the good resources of your own lifetime, all virtuous dharmas and the wealth resources you accumulated in your lifetime will also be destroyed in their hands. This is my addition, causing the precious human life already obtained to be wasted in vain. For example, a poisonous snake coiled under a tree. Someone mistakenly thinks it's a tree shadow and goes there to enjoy the shade as a result, bitten to death by the poisonous snake and loses their life. This is very dangerous. So the treasury of precious qualities also says, if not carefully examining the teacher, destroying faithful people's good resources, also destroying leisure like a poisonous snake, mistaking tree shadow will be deceived. At the beginning, you think this is a very good teacher, observing from all aspects. You can't see any improper behavior at all. Then you think, oh, meeting such a teacher throughout many lifetimes is extremely fortunate. The teacher and I must have karmic connections from past lives. When I see the teacher, I also want to cry. The teacher also wants to laugh when looking at me. Just joking, I made that up. Teachers don't want to cry. Generally, disciples cry. The karmic connection of laughter and tears coming together is definitely from many lifetimes a karmic connection of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Now many people speak like this, I have such and such karmic connections with the teacher, want to cry, want to laugh. So at the beginning, they think the teacher is also very compassionate, possibly helpful for one's own liberation. As a result, some people completely offer all their wealth. A while ago, someone said he was a certain teacher, but actually wasn't this person at all. She had never heard this teacher's voice nor seen this teacher, thinking he truly was this teacher. Later, without her family knowing, a lot of money was stuffed into his card every day, continuously like this. Later, when she met another teacher, it turned out it wasn't him at all. There was no such thing. He had never been to those places. Oh, then she discovered there was actually such a person hidden. There was such an incarnation behind the scene. So, the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma also teaches if approaching evil spiritual friends, various sufferings constantly continue, will experience evil realm sufferings. These sufferings are indescribable. I think this sutra has also truly prophesied if relying on an evil spiritual friend, then in this lifetime much wealth, including one's own time, will all be ruined. In future lives, the suffering experienced in evil realms goes without saying. Actually, we humans are originally not so bad, later relying on evil spiritual friends, relying on evil people, some character changes. Originally, one of my teachers said, "Alas, so-and-so has become corrupt. The person himself isn't that bad, but helplessly he's been polluted by the environment." So what he said is also correct. The Ekottara Agama also teaches people originally have no evil, but through associating with evil spiritual friends, later they will plant evil roots forever in darkness. People originally have no such evil. Later, their habitual tendencies through approaching evil spiritual friends, they plant evil roots can only forever sink in such darkness. Actually, after relying on many such evil spiritual friends, it's indeed very painful. But there's no way. Therefore, first examining is very important. Therefore, we must certainly examine carefully and in detail. Patrul Rinpoche spoke very specifically. After correctly and unmistakably discerning, then we can wholeheartedly rely on a teacher who possesses those qualities mentioned before. From then on, constantly regard the teacher as a true Buddha. Such a teacher with all qualities perfectly complete, possessing the essence of great compassion and wisdom of all Buddhas, of the 10 directions appears in human form, only to benefit sentient beings to be trained. As the Treasury of Precious Qualities says, a teacher with perfect characteristics is the embodiment of all Buddha's wisdom and compassion appearing in human form, before those to be trained, the supreme root of accomplishment. Those teachers who truly possess the above qualifications are actually the embodiment of all Buddha's great compassion and wisdom. They merely appear as spiritual teachers before us humans. Now, some people in Chinese areas don't accept viewing the teacher as Buddha, that teachers are Buddha's emanations before sentient beings. I think such statements are incorrect. Some of them think this is a Tibetan tantric teaching, viewing the teacher as Buddha is a Tibetan tantric teaching. Actually, they themselves haven't studied some sutra classics. In sutra classics, there are also such teachings, like in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, it says, "Out of compassion for all sentient beings, he manifests various forms and images." Buddha, having compassion for all sentient beings, manifests in various forms. Also, in the original vows of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Sutra, it says, "I divide into hundreds of thousands of billions of forms to liberate beings," meaning Buddha transforms into hundreds of thousands of billions of different beings to liberate them, liberating them according to their faculties, appearing before sentient beings according to their spiritual capacity, so Buddha's emanations before sentient beings can be established. Also, when we regard teachers as Buddhas, some scriptures say they are truly Buddhas. Some scriptures say to treat them like Buddhas. For example, the Sutra on the Samadhi for encountering face-to-face, the Buddhas of the present says one should respect the teacher, serve and make offerings regarding them as Buddha. This sutra says when we rely on spiritual teachers, we should respect, serve, and make offerings, treating them just like Buddha. Here it says, like Buddha. Also in the Flower Ornament Sutra, it teaches we are like blind people, although we don't know that Buddha manifests in various forms to liberate us. But actually, when Buddha liberates in the form of a teacher actually for us blind people, there is good reason, like the pure bright sun appearing in the world. Though the blind cannot see it, it still brings benefit. Although we blind people don't discover it, but actually when Buddha comes to this world in the form of a teacher, then when he teaches us the right path, I don't necessarily see that he is Buddha, but actually it benefits me. For example, a blind person cannot see the sun rising, but after the sun rises, actually the sun's warmth, the sun's rays shining on my body, also receive the sun's benefit. Sometimes you see when blind people sunbathe, they cannot see, but actually under the sunlight they still benefit. We are the same way. Because of ordinary beings' ignorance and delusion, we now cannot see that the so-called teacher is truly indivisible from Buddha. Now some people in Chinese areas and also some people in Tibetan areas, but perhaps their mindset is a bit better. Now some people, alas, saying this teacher is Buddha, they simply cannot generate this in their hearts. The teacher is no different from Buddha. They don't have such conviction in their hearts. They just think, alas, the teacher is petty, better not let him know. Otherwise, if he knows, he might be unhappy because he's like a girl. Comparing the teacher to, I've heard some Dharma friends' evaluations of certain teachers. Our teacher is such and such, he loves this and that most. When talking before others, in their hearts, it seems they basically have no conviction that the teacher's realization is no different from Buddha's. So I think in many sutra classics, for example, as taught in the Jewel Cloud Sutra, Zhaoan generate thoughts of the world honored one towards spiritual teachers, rely on spiritual teachers. Why? Diligence, escaping evil realms, increasing virtuous roots, these all appear through relying on spiritual teachers' power. So the Jewel Cloud Sutra says spiritual teachers are world-honored ones, generate thoughts of world-honored ones, thoughts of Buddha. If spiritual teachers are not Buddhas, just regarding stones as Buddhas, that would be unreasonable. So there's no difference from Buddha's enlightened intent. Also the flower ornament. Sutra says, generate thoughts of Tathagata towards spiritual teachers. Also in other scriptures it teaches, for example, the Ekottara Agama says, all pure conduct and practice entirely depend on spiritual teachers. Why? Buddha said, I also attained enlightenment by relying on spiritual teachers. So we should understand that teachers, this should also be taught below the teacher's enlightened intent, is no different from Buddha's essence. So perfectly qualified teachers are actually the embodiment of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Before sentient beings to be trained, they merely appear in ordinary form, eating, walking, appearing no different from ordinary people. Such spiritual teachers, in order to guide sentient beings to be trained temporarily, their every move and behavior appear exactly the same as all ordinary people. But from the ultimate perspective, the teacher's enlightened intent always abides in Buddha's state of realization. Yes, it's like this. From this perspective, they are fundamentally completely different from all worldly people. Actually, all the teacher's actions are behaviors that accord with the mind streams of sentient beings to be trained, possessing enlightened intent, transcending the ordinary, extraordinary, and uncommon. They can skillfully resolve disciples' countless doubts, and can also tolerate all disciples' wrong actions and mental anguish like a mother with her only child, as the treasury of precious qualities also teaches provisionally following all beings, ultimately contrary to all beings possessing enlightened intent, superior beings, skillfully dispelling doubt, tolerating worry and wrong conduct. From the provisional perspective, teachers, because they accord with sentient beings, are completely the same as sentient beings. From the ultimate perspective, the teacher's wisdom is exactly the same as Buddha's, so their actions are completely contrary to sentient beings. For example, when we have a teacher from the provisional perspective playing with little children. Hello, shall we play with this together? Let this be an airplane. But this is completely the teacher's provisional behavior, just according with the child to make him happy. But actually his purpose, if this child does something improper, it's impossible for the teacher to also follow the child in doing improper things. So, on crucial matters, teachers, as also taught in Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, because teachers accord with sentient beings, they are the same as everyone. Because teachers want to liberate these sentient beings, their ultimate enlightened intent and behavior are completely different from everyone's. All the teachers' actions are for liberating sentient beings, possessing enlightened intent. It's not acting according to their whims or driven by their own attachment, anger, and ignorance. These scriptural supports are also very important. Also, teachers can dispel sentient beings' doubts, wrong views, and wrong conduct. They can dispel all these. While we ordinary sentient beings absolutely cannot overcome these so truly qualified spiritual teachers outwardly appear the same as us humans, but actually they are true emanations of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So they are particularly distant from us, very distant from our true level of realization. Below, we use teachings from the Flower Ornament Sutra when discussing spiritual teachers. There are also many analogies we also teach here that teachers possessing all qualities are like great ships that can rescue sentient beings from crossing the great ocean of samsara. They are like merchant leaders who can unerringly point out the holy path to liberation and omniscient Buddhahood. Teachers are also like nectar rain that can extinguish the blazing fire of karma and afflictions. Teachers are also like the sun and moon. They can dispel layers of dark ignorance and manifest the bright light of true Dharma. They are like the earth, able to tolerate disciples' mental anguish and all wrong conduct their view, and conduct are vast and all-encompassing. Teachers are also like kalpa trees, referring to wish-fulfilling trees, the source of all sentient beings' merit and happiness in this life and future lives. Teachers are also like precious vases able to accomplish the inconceivable treasury of all wishes of various vehicles and schools. Teachers are also like mani jewels residing in the source of the great ocean of the four activities, pacifying, increasing, magnetizing, and wrathful as they wish. Below we discuss their four immeasurables. Their loving kindness is like parents toward boundless sentient beings without partiality or preference. Treating all equally, their great compassion is like a river widely compassionate toward all living beings under heaven, especially for helpless suffering, sentient beings. They feel even more urgent compassion. Their sympathetic joy is like the king of mountains, not swayed by jealous minds, not moved by the wind of grasping. It's impossible for teachers to be changed by jealousy, impossible to be driven by grasping, teachers being particularly grasping about this or that because of their sympathetic joy, whether toward loved ones or hated enemies. They treat all equally without discrimination. Their equanimity is like rain clouds, their mind stream not disturbed by attachment and anger. It should be possible to observe which teachers truly possess these qualifications. It should be possible. So the treasury of precious qualities also teaches thus: liberation from samsara's ocean like a great ship, the true merchant leader of the unmistaken supreme path, nectar, rain extinguishing karma and affliction fires, dispelling ignorance, darkness like sun and moon, encompassing all vehicles like the earth, source of benefit and happiness like kalpa trees, completely possessing dharma treasury like precious vases. Teachers surpass wish-fulfilling jewels, loving all beings equally like parents, vast and urgent compassion like rivers, unchanging sympathetic joy like mountain kings, undisturbed equanimity like rain clouds. In terms of great compassion and blessings, teachers and all Buddhas are equal. The teacher's great compassion and blessings, and all Buddha's great compassion and blessings are no different. Those who form good connections with teachers can become Buddhas in this very life. Even forming bad connections, generating wrong views toward teachers, hatred, even beating and scolding teachers, these actually still have meaning on the day of severing samsara. The root of samsara will be cut off. So sometimes slandering teachers, hating teachers, disliking teachers, these are also fundamental causes for uprooting samsara. So I'm very happy many people, as the verse says, such teachers equal to Buddhas, even harming them leads to the path of bliss. Harming teachers also leads to the path of bliss. Whoever relies on teachers with right faith, rain of all qualities descends. Good. Today we'll teach up to here.
Om